El Salam, this is video 2, okay? So, I think I got it together. Now, while in reality, the Gentile, Christian barbarian, Rothschild, Khazar Vatican, cabal of Babylon, okay, is a Babylonian-style synagogue of Satan of Jewish converts. They are a demonic let me get it right. Ecclesiastical hierarchy, who are Khazar, who is to represent the Khazar, Baron, Hungarian, Baron, barbarian, Hungarian barbarian, Nazis, and they are the masterminds behind maligning the global nation, and not only maligning but oppressing the global Israelite nation of Jacob. Okay, so they are the ones who are doing that, and it is they that are the invisible blue bloody hands behind the scenes, and they are responsible for pulling the trigger as they manipulate and target all of the entire global nation of Jacob, that have been that were napped and enslaved all across the Western world. And also disenfranchised from the global economy. Left in squalor. Miseducated. Like I said, miseducated, oppressed economically, incarcerated to the greatest degree. And ultimately assassinated on the streets, humiliated and assassinated on the streets through police brutality as a result of oppressive, discriminating political policy. Commercial political policy. So in 1978, that's where the countdown. Their countdown began. The countdown to September 23rd. Now, as I said, they've been doing. When I post a video of the of Revelations 12:12 that to represent, the woman of 12:12. It also shows all the. It shows like a big Israeli flag and Israeli cabal and the Israelis fighting and all this kind of stuff. Those are that's the synagogue of Satan. So basically, what you see there is the synagogue of Satan incriminating itself, because they are barbarian of the barbarian horde. Khazar barbarian horde from Attila the Hun, who basically captured the Vatican. I forget the exact date, but if you go back in history and you refer to Attila the Hun's his attacks on many of the European nations, his ravaging and sacking all of Europe, that's what I want to say, his sacking all of the great deals of Europe. That's also the timeline when he also took over the Vatican. Now, so they're the basic ones who, when you see the video and you see them fighting wars, they are the synagogue of Satan. So basically, they're demonstrating that they are attacking and destroying the Palestinian nations, many Arab nations, because they are the imposters. So what they are doing is they're war criminals, is what they are. They are strictly war criminals. Okay, so, and back in 1978, they started their countdown because they knew in September 23rd, 2017, the revelation would appear and the true Messiah was to appear 7 years after that. So 7 years after 2017 would be what? It would be 2024. It would be 2024. So 2024 is when we can expect, or there shortly after, as expected, we can expect to see the prophet born of a virgin return. And he's to return, what did we say? In Syria. So what were they working mightily? What was these Khazar Zionists working mightily hard to attack Syria and attack Iran and want to secure Israel, all right? The fake Babylonian Zionist synagogue of Satan, Israel, okay? Under the guise of, we are the fake, we are the black nobility, we are the true heirs of Jackob, okay? Having been nowhere near Jackob, right? Okay. Now, so they knew that the prophet was to, the sign of the woman was to appear September 23rd, 2017. Okay, so they want to hurry up and attempt to what does that say? Not impose, but to perpetrate that themselves as the prophet, right? Their fake Messiah would rise. Their beast would rise. The Antichrist, right, would rise. Okay, so, and another thing too is that so the prophet born of a virgin is to arise out of Syria, right? Okay, and he's to meet with the Mahdi. Okay, just to show you that they're on the timeline. They're trying to tell you that Islam is not correct, but yet they're following the timeline that Islam has for the return of the prophet born of a virgin, right? So, and it says, prophecy says, Islamic prophecy says, and Islam means submission, okay, to Allah, and also remember, the one who started the Inquisition was Ferdinand and Isabel and Ferdinand Castile, right? The Castiles instituted the French, not the French, but the Spanish Inquisition, right? And it was supposedly to convert Muslims and Jews back to Christianity, right? But when they died, the Castiles died, that instituted and did all that killing, okay, and torture in their torture chambers, or Vatican torture chamber, okay? When they died, okay, guess what they put above their tomb, okay? Their mausoleum. La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, which translates to say, there is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his messenger. So they put that over their tomb. They didn't put what is that? Saved by the blood, or whatever they say to become Christian. Okay, they didn't put the Christian there, manifest there. No, they put La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. Okay, over their mausoleum. So that should tell you something right there. Despite the fact they did all that pillaging, and not the pillaging, well, they did pillaging too of the new, supposed new America, right? The new world, stealing all the silver and the gold and the massacring and all that kind of stuff, right? Okay, and supposedly turned them to Christian too. But when they died, the Castiles died, Isabel and Ferdinand, the so-called king and queen of Spain. Okay, they put there is no God but Allah over their mausoleum. Okay. Despite they did all of that torture to convert people to Christianity. They didn't die as Christians. They died. They put over their tomb so that they could be recognized as having died as Muslims. Okay? Now, so that should tell you something right there. Now, going back to the prophet coming out of Syria. Now the prophet Isa, when he arrives, okay, he is supposed to arise out of Syria, and he's supposed to meet with the Mahdi. And so when he meets with the Mahdi, they're going to meet in a mosque, right? He's going to come into the mosque, and he's going to see the Mahdi leading a prayer. And the Mahdi is going to recognize Prophet Isa, and he's going to ask Prophet Isa to lead the prayer. And Prophet Isa is going to tell him no, to go, that it's okay to let, that he would, prefer that the Mahdi continue and lead the prayer. Okay, so the two are going to pray together. The Mahdi and the prophet born of a virgin are going to pray together in Syria. Okay, when he arrives, and he's supposed to arrive when the scheduled date is 2024 or after. Okay, now, so now that's symbolic. Now the Francis, the one they call Pope Francis, and the former Pope Ratcliffe, the one who resigned, right? He met with the two popes, got together and prayed in the Vatican, right? To a black Madonna, right? Mother and child, black mother and child. So that should tell you something. Those should be clues while they're feeding you toxic spirituality, corrupt spirituality. They're trying to mimic the true spirituality and kill the ones with the truth that are trying to give it to you. Okay? They're trying to kill the Muslims. Okay? Trying to bar them from entering the United States, right? Putting a Muslim ban, right? Okay. Muslim la qadar Allah. Okay? Now, so they knew all this was going to take place, and this was recent that those so-called two popes met up and prayed in front of the black Madonna. I posted that. In fact, all the Madonnas are black, okay, representing the black mother, the holy black mother, okay, the one that has Ra in her womb, right? Her womb represents Ra, okay? Okay, so back in 1978, the Zionist countdown began to September 23rd, 2017, and their tribulation began with the Camp David Peace Accords. So their attack on the world began with the Camp David Peace Accords, right? Okay. To try to make peace between the Egypt, okay, Kemet, from which came the seed of the woman, right? Because Kemet is Egypt, right? And Hajar was Egyptian. That was Prophet Abraham's Egyptian wife, right? Beautiful Egyptian wife, black Egyptian wife, okay? Is the mother of Islam, okay? Because she's Ishmael's mother, okay? Now, so the seed of the woman, right? So they make the peace with the seed of the woman, right? Only to buy them time, because before that they were having war with Egypt, because the Egyptians were the main ones who went against the occupation of Palestine, and they fought for the Palestinians. So they wanted to give themselves time to build up their military, to try to take over the world, and do all these false flags and wars and all this kind of stuff. Okay? So back in 1978 was the countdown. That's when they began the Camp David, Camp Dawood, okay? Dawood, because that's what David means, okay? Anyway, so they wanted to, the Zionist countdown began to September 23rd, 2017, and their tribulation began with the Camp David Peace Accords in 1978, as I said, with the Kemetic or Egyptian president Anwar Sadat, okay? Okay. And the warmongering Gentile, so the peace agreement was between Anwar Sadat, the Egyptian president, and the warmongering Gentile Christian barbarian Zionist Rothschild Khazar Vatican, okay? And their Babylonian, Jewish, Israeli, synagogue of Satan, Zionist converts, right? Okay, it began, okay, because, and also they recognize that because, as we said, Pluto, it was a great sign to them when Pluto went into the orbital position that usually is Neptune's position, right? So Neptune was on the outside, the far outside, and Pluto was on the inside, okay? Excuse me, Pluto was in the position where Neptune was supposed to be. Okay, so that's symbolic of the universe getting pregnant. Okay, so that was a great sign to them that there would be a baby born. Okay, and okay, so the universe got pregnant. Okay, and as we said, Pluto entered the its long 20-year stay in the orbital position of where Neptune usually orbits, Neptune's orbital field. It was to be a pregnancy that lasts until 1999. So the pregnancy started in 1979, and it ended in 1999. Okay, now, okay, and it represented, and in 1997, that's when we saw Hell Bob. And Hell Bob was the, which actually means Hell Pop, okay, because they try to hide stuff and disguise it in spelling and language and all this kind of stuff. So Hell Pop, meaning the father, or the return of the Holy Father. So it was Hell Father, right? Because they're expecting the prophet born of a virgin to return. Now, also consequently, in 1979, okay, was the end of the year 1399 for on the Islamic calendar, as we stated before. Okay, so in 1980 it began the year 1400, which is like the rebirth of Islam. Okay. So and for the rebirth of Islam also, and as we said, what was going to be the sign of the rebirth? Also, the prophet is going to be with the Mahdi. So they knew that Islam was going to awaken. Okay, the Muslims were going to awaken and be awakened by prophet born of a virgin, and he was going to aid in freeing Palestine and ending and destroying the Antichrist, okay? Because that's why the prophet is to return, to destroy the Antichrist. The one who, the Antichrist is to be the impersonator of the prophet born of a virgin, just as the Antichrist is to impersonate the Israelite nation of Jackob, right? The Khazars are the impersonators. The Khazars, Rothschilds, will be the Antichrist, supported by the Drumpf. Okay, now, who's trying to steal Jerusalem, right? To transfer over to the barren Antichrist, right? Okay, now, so it was the universal pregnancy was to last from 1979 until 1999, and the beginning of the, let's say, the last term of the pregnancy was marked by, the ending of the pregnancy was marked by the the comet Hell Bob or Hell Pop, right? Which was, as I said, marking the return of the Holy Father, or the prophet born of a virgin. It is what the year 1979 meant to religious observers of celestial events as they reflect the spiritual times, okay, and the spiritual mind of Allah, because the universe is supposed to represent the spiritual mind of Allah, okay? That is what the universe represents. The planets and all of that, they're supposed to represent the spiritual will or mind or intentions of Allah, okay? As it relates to time, okay? And events. Okay, so in 1979 was the end, as we said, 1979 was the end of the 1399 celestial year on the Islamic calendar, and the new year the new celestial year 1400 began in 1980, which also reflected a new beginning or rebirth of Islam through. Although 1979 was not a year, it was not, okay? Now, Muslims were not paying attention to this. Muslims were not on this timeline. Muslims just follow the, what they call the pillars of Islam that was given to them by Prophet Muhammad, alayhi salam, which is pray, first believe in Allah and His prophets, all the prophets, believe in the angels, believe in Judgment Day, give zakah, and make hajj. Fulfilling those pillars, okay, then one is doing their spiritual duty, observing their spiritual duty, their Islamic spiritual duty. That's all they have to do. They don't have to watch all the celestial events because Islam is in harmony with the celestial events, right? Just as you follow this timeline, you will see that Islam is in harmony with the celestial events, okay? But nonetheless, you didn't see Muslims you didn't see Muslims, observing the let's say the Zionist timeline. Well, it's not even their timeline, but Muslims weren't paying attention to this timeline. They were just waiting for the Mahdi and waiting for the Prophet to come. They're not observing the skies other than when Ramadan begins and when Ramadan ends. That's basically what the Muslims look for. They weren't looking for the end of the celestial year to see the Prophet return and all this kind of stuff to attack the Zionist cabal, the synagogue of Satan and all this kind of stuff. You got to think, who would do that? It would be the ones who would be watching for the Prophet to return so intensely. It would be those who knew, let's put it this way. If a person is trying to steal something, they're going to be on the lookout for let's say the police, because they don't want to get caught. So if we say Prophet Isa is the police, then the Zionists are going to be the ones looking out for the Prophet born of a virgin to come so that they would know how much time they had in order to continue stealing, all right, or to try to get away with their theft. Okay, so they were watching out for the Prophet on this timeline, and then when they saw the timeline get near, that's when they began to attack humanity, Muslim, the world, and start these peace accords, and then ultimately break it again, as we shall see. Okay, so as we said, 1979 began the end of the year 1399. Okay, on the Islamic calendar, and the new year 1400 began in 1980. And that time shift is like it's like going from the year 1999 to the year 2000. It's a millennial change, okay? So, no, better than that. It's like going from when a celestial year ends, it's like, a new year begins, so all things are new again. So it's like the purification and starting over again. It's like a rebirth. Okay, so Islam was going through a rebirth, okay, and they wanted to block that rebirth because they knew within that rebirth the Prophet born of a virgin is to arrive, okay. They tried to repress that rebirth, okay. So like we said, so the year 1400 began in 1980. Which also reflected the new beginning or rebirth of Islam. Although 1979 was not a year most relevant to Muslims, it was to the Gentile barbarian Christian Rothschild, the Khazar Hungarian barbarians, okay, Vatican Jewish Israeli synagogue of Satan, Babylonian Zionist converts, okay? Okay, the sign of the second coming was near, okay, and they were aware of that. The sign of the second coming of the Prophet born of a virgin, the Hebrew virgin, okay, represented the return, let me start again. The sign of the second coming of the Prophet born of a Hebrew virgin represented the return of, while it represented, it celestially represents, okay, 1979 and the pregnancy of the universe, okay, as it relates to Pluto going in this position of Neptune, represent, and the year, ending of the year of 1399, which was, and the beginning of the new year, 1400, in 1980, okay, that was represented to the Hungarian Vatican, okay, the Khazar Hungarian barbarian Vatican, that the Antichrist would also appear, because remember, the Antichrist is to also appear at the same time as the prophet. They have to be together, right? They have to come, they have to be around, appear at the same time, because the prophet born of a virgin, the Hebrew prophet born of a virgin, because his mother was Hebrew, so he's got to be Hebrew too, right? So the Hebrew prophet born of a Hebrew virgin is to appear in 2024, or shortly after that time, because he's supposed to appear, right, 7 years after, as the Bible reports, 7 years after the sign that is to appear. Revelation 12 is to appear September 23rd, 2017, right? So if we add 7 years to that, that will be what? 2024, right? Okay, so they knew their the Khazars, the Gentile Christian barbarians, Rothschild barbarians, they knew that their Antichrist is to arrive, okay, shortly after that too, okay, which he's already born. The Antichrist, Dajjal, is already born. The Baron Dajjal, he's already born. He was born, he was conceived 2001, and born 2002, okay, so he's here. He will be, they're just waiting for his first Saturn return to come, and that's to be around 2000, at 29 years to 2002. And so, because Saturn was in I think it was, Saturn was in Gemini, and that's the doors of the universe, supposed to be the doors, right? So Saturn was in Gemini in 2001, 2002. So they're waiting for them to get back to that spot in 29 years. So just estimate where Saturn is right now in Sagittarius, and how many years it's going to take to get up to where the spot of Gemini is, the constellation of Gemini, and that should be around 2020, 29, 2030. So he's still, the Dajjal is supposed to be here around that time. Well, he's already here, but he's supposed to make his appearance, right, on the scene. Okay. So anyway, now, the sign of the second coming of the prophet born of a Hebrew virgin represents the return of the prophet born of a virgin, but for the barren Antichrist, those who follow the Antichrist, okay, the Babylonian Antichrist, the Dajjal, that sign meant to them that the Dajjal would also be here, okay? Thus, in order to prepare the way for the barren Antichrist Dajjal, Zionists started in 1978 with the, okay, so they started preparing in 1978, okay, with the Camp David peace accords, okay, but no, and Muslims, if Muslims would have known that this was the case, okay, they wouldn't have made the Camp David peace accords. They wouldn't have done that. Remember, in the Bible it says there's supposed to be a fake peace agreement that's supposed to be broken too. Well, that agreement was broken in 2001 with the attack on the world trade, and then consequently the attack on Islam, because that's what it was meant to be, right? An attack on Islam to break the peace agreement, so that they could go in and start creating killing civil wars and what the Arab Springs and all of that, and caused the great rip up the seed out of the Holy Land, right, through the great not migration, but the refugees that have left their homeland, right? So that's like taking the root out. Millions and millions of Muslims and Arabs that have been migrated out, okay, scared by what? By civil war in Syria, civil war in Libya, civil war in what they're trying to cause in Iraq, la la la, civil war in, and what they tried to cause in Egypt, okay, civil war in many Muslim countries that caused the Great Migration, to which European nations have had to suffer to open up its borders to many of the refugees seeking basically asylum in those nations, those European nations. In reality, those European nations, the head of those European nations should call for, peace, okay, in those nations, so that those refugees will not have to leave their home, because many of them don't want to leave their home, many of them just don't want to do that, right? So these Israelis, these Zionists, were very aware that the year 1979 meant, and they were preparing for it through the peace accords, right? Then they sacrificed. Then after they made the peace agreement, in order to make sure that the peace agreement held, right, what did they do? They assassinated or sacrificed the Kemetic or Egyptian president Anwar Sadat. Okay, now, and that was in 1981, okay, after they made the peace agreement. It's 1979, right? Okay, so it's like, in order to seal that peace agreement, okay, and to start a new year, okay, in order to accommodate the timeline for the new Muslim year, right, they assassinated Anwar Sadat, right, and the guys was, these were Muslim jihadists, okay, 2 men, okay, killed Sadat, and probably was a false flag, okay, and and then from that time period on, you heard about Muslim jihadists, okay, and Al-Qaeda, and all these so-called Muslim terrorist groups, okay? But prior to that, you didn't hear nothing, right? Because there was nothing, there still is nothing to which one can propagate or use propaganda against the Muslims in order to steal the legacy, because Muslims are entitled to the legacy, right? Okay, because many of those Jewish Israelites embraced Islam. Okay, excuse me. Okay, so what did they do after they assassinated Anwar Sadat in 1981? What? Then there was a marriage, right? Because in the Bible, what does it say? There's to be a marriage, right? The marriage agreement, right? There's to be a marriage, right? So there was a marriage, okay? The marriage of whom? English, Gentile, Christian, fake black Zionist nobility, barbarian nobility, Charles, and the sweet, beautiful, innocent Princess Diana. And she was beautiful. And look at her name. Even her name represented, okay? Represented the Black Madonna, or the Black Diana. It's either Madonna, as you can call it either way. Diana or Madonna. It still represents the same, okay? We're going to go to video 3. Yeah. So,